Welcome to the Startup Grind.
So tonight, we are really pleased to have Haley Bohon, who graduated in 2012 from NC State with a degree in mechanical engineering. And after early stints with Newell Rubbermaid and Passport as a project manager, Haley was looking for a way to socialize outside the normal circles and continue to broaden her interest areas with quick in-person development. She found out a lot of other people had the same need, and that is how the idea for SkillPop was formed. SkillPop is one of Charlotte's fastest growing startups, fresh out of the Techstars Austin Accelerator program. So please give a big Winston-Salem welcome to Haley Bohon. They love you. Yeah, they love you. This is going to be easy. Okay, so I kind of like to begin with kind of how you got started on your entrepreneurial path. So tell us a little bit about how you got started with this whole thing and some of the early influences you had maybe from family. And NC State is a well-known institution with design, engineering, and entrepreneurial programs. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so well, thanks for having me. First of all, thanks everyone for coming out. This is awesome. I grew up in the Triad in Greensboro, so right down the road. And I think Peter's alluding to family because my dad's a small business owner here. And so for me, growing up, small business ownership and entrepreneurship was a very normal thing to see. I remember in school, like finding out for the first time that other people's dads worked, had jobs. You know, I just assumed everyone's dad just did their own thing like my dad did. You know, all those things you kind of figure out for the first time. But I thought I'd have a very traditional career path. So I went to NC State for engineering school. I liked math, I liked problem solving, and so I just started taking steps in that direction towards that career path. Had a few cool opportunities in college to do a little bit more innovative things. I had a senior design class that was entrepreneurship based, and so I think when I look back on my early influences and college and early career, there wasn't a moment where I ever thought I'm going to start a startup, but I see little seeds planted of where I'd just get a taste of something and really like it.
Cool. So and then you actually had some pretty good experiences from an internship standpoint and early job. So you told me you were involved kind of in a advanced project team at Newell Rubbermaid as an intern, right? So tell us a little bit about what you were doing there.
Yeah, I did internships pretty much every summer in college. I think I was just trying to figure out what I was going to do afterwards. So I was trying out as many things as I could. At Newell, I interned with them the summer before I graduated, and really got to work with their innovation group. So they just said, here's a technology that we're exploring, see if you can come up with a product around it, and that was it. That was my project for the whole summer. So I felt like that was the dream job, and it kind of was. It was a great internship, and let me kind of taste, how do you survey customers, and how do you find out if an idea is needed in a market. But then also the product development and the engineering side of things too, that was wrapped up all in there.
Yeah, so that kind of got things ticking. And then a lot of times when we're coaching particularly young startups that are just graduating from college or coming out of a graduate program, a lot of times we'll tell them if they're not sure about whether they should try a startup experience, we say, well, go work for a growth stage startup. Go work for a company that's established market traction and is going through kind of the rapid growth experience, because you'll learn a whole lot there. And that's kind of what happened at Passport, right? So tell everybody about your Passport experience.
Yeah. Is anyone familiar with Passport? They're out of Charlotte. They're doing really well. They're a technology company that does apps for parking and transportation. So if you've ever paid for parking with your phone, that's a lot of what they do. But they're also building technology for paying for bus tickets. They just took over the light rail in Charlotte, so a lot of transit. I came on with them when they were about 25 employees in a loft in pretty close to downtown. And I think the best thing about my early career was getting to work at a really big company and then getting to work at a very small, nimble, but growing really fast company, just seeing that contrast. So I saw a big company and saw kind of how, on the very bottom of the totem pole, what that felt like and how big companies made decisions and how things changed. And then I worked for Passport and sat from here to there from the CEO and just saw a really different side of business and saw things change much faster. And so, I think part of the experience was just getting to see that contrast, and then also seeing that it's everyday people who start companies and who have ideas and work really hard and run with them.
Right. So you kind of experienced the CEO wearing a ton of hats and trying to keep the business in between the guardrails during growth, right? So I imagine that person wasn't real happy when you decided to launch SkillPop, right? They wanted to keep you, right?
It actually was the best. It was the best experience. So I was, I launched, and we can get into this. I launched SkillPop in 2015. So it was while I was at Passport, I started kind of working on this idea of, learning new things should be easier. It should be social. When you grow up, you learn things next to people in real life all the time. Anyway, so I was working on that idea all summer, and when I left Passport, the CEO sat me down and gave me business advice on my last day of work. So it was a very positive. He wasn't unhappy. It was a positive thing.
Right. So I think we talked a little bit earlier about the basic idea, the inspiration that you got. I mean, was there like a light bulb moment when this idea hit, or did it just gradually kind of form in your head that this would be a really cool thing and maybe you should test it out?
Yeah, I think it grew over time. I don't remember a particular light bulb. It really was thinking if I wanted to, I just bought a camera on Craigslist. I wanted to learn how to use it, and it didn't feel like there was a great place for that didn't take a decent chunk of money or 8 weeks of evenings after work that I didn't have 8 weeks of evenings after work.
You mean like our marketing class, or?
No.
Just kidding.
There's all different ways to learn things, and a lot of them are great. So not a huge lightning bulb moment, but I remember talking to I just remember talking to more and more people and seeing it resonate with people of, for when you're not ready to dive into the 8 weeks of the marketing class, where do you go to just try something out for a little bit? If you have $30 in one evening, how do you test drive something before you decide to make it a huge hobby or passion? Or if you have a business you're thinking of starting, where do you go for that? But a lot of what I saw a need for was the social element of it, was the gathering around with people and all learning the same thing and bonding over that and connecting over that.
Right. And actually that's informing us, because we do kind of the long-term 8 to 10 week curriculum here, which is part of why we're interested in setting up a learning management system, but also breaking it apart into bite-sized chunks.
Yeah.
So maybe you don't want to, take the whole thing. Maybe you're just interested in a specific piece, and you're delivering that kind of learning experience.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways to learn something.
So you worked on this for a while, right? You didn't just like launch. You worked on it out of your house for like 12 months. You told me, and you got a fair. Tell us about the mentoring and the support that you got during that developmental period.
Yeah.
Kind of pre-launch.
Yeah.
Trying things out, and what was kind of totally unique for you in that experience.
Totally. I feel like you're looking for something specific. I think I know.
I am, and I'm going to lead you to it if you don't tell me what it is.
So it was a little bit shorter of a development period. I started working on this in June of 2015. From those experiences in the entrepreneurship class in college and even at Newell, I knew enough to kind of bare bones put a business plan together and to know I should survey people and get some insight on this concept. So I spent from June to August roughing it out, saying if this was going to be a thing, what would that look like? Where would I find teachers? What are these classes? Is this class, is it a month? Is it a night? What time? All of those little details. And then we did our first test class that September, and that's around when I left my job to see if we could make this work. The answer I think you're looking for is, the nature of our, this is going to be really interesting if it's not what you're looking for. But
it is.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So what I found very quickly was that through the nature of this specific business, I was connecting with community leaders on all types of things. The first woman I met was a friend of my realtor who was a hand lettering artist, and we had coffee, and I said, if we were going to do a class together, let's talk about what that would look like. And we bought Sharpies, and we put a class up there, we made it happen. The second person I connected with was a social media expert. Later, I connected with the VP of marketing at Ortho Carolina. And so I remember, again, being an engineer, not having a business degree or background, just sitting in the back of that marketing class and writing down everything that was coming out of his mouth and just soaking up everything.
Yeah, so kind of in a way, just in developing your business, you were actually creating a mentor network of subject matter experts
100%.
that could
yeah.
give you a lot of business advice. So it's like totally cool. This is
Yeah.
this is more of a problem for other startups that aren't engaged in the learning business.
Yeah, but a lot of the classes I was picking were things because I thought I need some help with this, and I bet other people need help with that too.
So when we talked in our pre-event interview, you talked a little bit about how important you think the iterative process is when you're developing an MVP and kind of going out and testing. So tell us a little bit about that and your philosophy about that.
Yeah, I think this is something I hung on to from engineering school and from doing product development, is that when you're thinking of a business concept or any kind of product, you have to just get it out there. And so I really believe in the minimum viable product and what is what's the rough and loose of this concept that we can get in front of people and get insight on and see, does it work? Does it not work? Do people love it? Do they hate it? And so, we've kind of embraced that since day one. Our first class was totally for free. It was in a co-working space similar to this. And it was just 15 people and Sharpies, and I bought a couple snacks, and we did a hand lettering class, and we just said, let's see how this works. And it was a hit. It was awesome. And so a lot of times, we try and as a company, move pretty quickly so that we can see if what we're doing is on the right path or if we need to adjust and course correct and iterate.
So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. So a lot of times in kind of evaluating and screening companies for our investment program, we're biased against solo founders. And that bias comes from starting a business just has a million tasks associated with it. And it's difficult to find a co-founder that has all the skill sets to tackle all those tasks, and there's just so much to do, it's really difficult. But you're a solo founder, so you're the exception to the rule, and I know you have a viewpoint on this, so what's your viewpoint on being a solo founder?
Yeah,
You're kind of a solo, you had some support, right, behind the scenes?
I totally had some support.
Yeah.
I mean, my husband was really supportive from the beginning and was kind of my sounding board when I was coming home and talking about what would this look like. And then I was also building a community along the way of people who really gave a lot of insight into what we became. My only perspective on solo founders is that I've seen a lot of co-founder partnerships now work out.
Right.
And so I think that's just as risky.
Yeah, that's the other side of the coin,
yeah.
right? Is if that relationship goes south, it's a huge problem for
Yeah.
the business, right?
But we've also, I can see where it's valuable because we've had a lot of, we've been running for a little over 3 years, and there have been highs and lows in that, and there have been challenges and times where it would have been great to have someone bearing half of whatever we're dealing with.
So the Charlotte community in particular has kind of had an upsurge of female founders. And I think I'm remembering correctly, the cohort that went to Techstars Austin with you was all female founders, is that right?
Are you all familiar with Techstars? Mostly, yes, great. Okay, so there were 10 companies in our cohort. 3 of us were from Charlotte, and all 3 of us were female founders.
Right,
Yeah.
so that was a little bit unusual. So tell us a little bit about your experience as a female founder from the perspective that you came out of the mechanical engineering world, which is pretty male-dominated.
90%
Yeah,
men.
it's like
Yeah.
90% men. So you've been kind of in that environment. I mean, do you have a viewpoint on that you want to share with us?
Yeah, I think it not a strong viewpoint, but it did feel very. There was no shock to my system to be a female founder, right, coming out of engineering school, because I went from engineering school into engineering for a corporation where I was one of 2 women on my team, into implementation for a tech startup where I was the only woman on my team. So I'm working with more women now than I ever have before. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of great women out there to work with.
Yeah. Right. So it's good to see, and it had to be an awesome experience. So tell us a little bit about the Techstars experience.
Yeah.
For the I don't know that everybody kind of totally knows how that works.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 female founder companies go to Austin, and what happened?
Yeah, so Techstars is similar to Startup Grind, it's a global program. It's an accelerator. It was 12 weeks. We went to the Austin chapter. They picked 10 companies. So in our cohort, there was SkillPop, there were a few other consumer brands, there was a blockchain company, there was a software company, whole range of things. They have a really heavy focus on mentorship. So out of the 12 weeks, we spent a lot of time meeting with people who had built and exited successful startups, or people who were high up at companies there in Austin, or who were connected with the Techstars network in some other capacity. But we did a lot of working with mentors and a lot of workshops, but also just kind of had time away from the day in and day out to focus on our business. And for me, it was really a time of getting to question the things we've done for the last 2 years and say, is this scalable? Is this working? It really pushed us in some ways and helped us look and challenge the things we were doing.
So I think they refer to their mentor process as mentor madness, right? Because how many mentors do you figure you interacted with?
115.
115
Yeah.
in the course of the program. So it's intense.
Yeah, they do like a speed dating style where you meet about 10 to 12 a day.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're just constantly working on your business concept, the idea, how to pitch it.
Working on your pitch. Yeah.
Right. It's very intense. And Techstars, not to do an ad for them, but Techstars is similar to Startup Grind in that it's acceleration at global scale.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's grown into being the biggest global network of successful entrepreneurs, and they're all focused on these acceleration programs, which are now being held all over the world. So there's another way that kind of you've differentiated yourself, I think, from other startups. We had a Startup Grind presenter here in Winston-Salem named Ian Lucy, who runs the Lucy Fund in Dublin, Ireland. And he opened his Startup Grind conversation with the comment that Americans are addicted to venture capital like crack cocaine. It's like all they think about is fundraising, 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 instead of thinking about building their businesses. So you've been a contrarian in that regard as well. I mean, you pretty much bootstrapped and self-funded SkillPop to where it is today. You had a little bit of financial help with Techstars, right? But so tell us a little bit about that, about what your thinking is about the whole private equity, deal
Totally.
that most startups obsess about, and
Yeah.
how you've avoided that.
It's really interesting. I think when I started SkillPop, I didn't start it with the intention of we're going to be the next high growth startup and this is going to go to the moon. I had a need and I wanted to test the concept, and it was kind of a day at a time growth from there. So I would say, from year 0 to 2, it really never crossed my mind. I think it helped being in, I don't know how Winston-Salem is, but Charlotte's not, and maybe North Carolina in general, is not known for being a place where people are handing out checks left and right, and where venture capital is readily available compared to somewhere like Silicon Valley or New York or Austin. And so it was a little bit of a different environment. It wasn't something that really crossed my mind for the first couple of years. And it wasn't until I got into Techstars and started looking at it and started having more investor meetings that I even thought about fundraising. My approach and my goal is to build the best business that I can. And to this date, we haven't needed capital to do that. We've been able to grow the team that I want to grow. We've been able to launch the cities that I want to launch on our own with the money that we have. And so I'm just taking the approach of we're going to do that for as long as we can.
Right. So I need to introduce you to Ian. I think you'd like him. So we talked a lot about culture and values kind of being central to your success, and you talked about a few things that are like really important to you.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of what you're trying to build and what makes it meaningful, right? So share that with the audience, kind of what, how culture is driving SkillPop and the things that you have shared with your employees, or these are things that really matter to this company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think first and foremost is we're not a nonprofit. We're not but we're a company with a lot of we're very mission driven, right? And so we're doing what we are doing because we think there's a strong need and because we want to bring communities together and give people a way to learn new things. And so a lot of our decision making just comes down to, are we doing this one thing that we're setting out to do, and are we doing it the best that we can? We're also very scrappy, and so a lot of the things that I try and instill in my team and the things that I try and kind of set as an example is we're problem solvers. We get things done in creative ways, and I think a lot of that goes back to being self-funded, and even goes back to coming from an engineering background. I think there's always a solution to whatever problem we have.
Right. And you've been able to automate a fairly complex environment. I mean, it's not easy to run 100+ courses in 6 cities and just figure out what's next,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
you've been able to use technology to really kind of automate that entire process.
I partially automate. We technology plays a heavy role in how we schedule and how we communicate with our teachers and how we manage our inventory, all of those things. But we're very involved in the
Right.
details as well. Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to go off script here a little bit. So we hear a lot about timing, right? So I participated in a study that did a regression analysis on over 2,000 successful startups and trying to identify what are the key success factors that resulted in this company succeeding versus the thousands of failures on the other side. And the most important success factor that they found in the study was timing, that not being too far ahead of the market or behind the market, and kind of having discovered an emerging secret that technology can help address, that's addressing kind of a new emerging demand. So in a lot of ways, your timing was perfect, right? So this is a generational preference, right, in terms of learning style, a desire to socialize, right, that may be actually a reaction to technology, I don't know. Yeah. And then your ability to deliver it is largely happening through the co-working infrastructure, right, that has emerged across the United States. So a lot of your classes are held at. So tell us a little bit about kind of how all that came together for you.
Yeah. I think you're
Is that
absolutely
it?
right. Yeah.
Did I just do it? Okay.
Well, no, I'll add to it.
Yeah, add to it.
And
It's
I'll
your
add,
company.
and I'll add that what I've seen is just the experience market is growing like it's never grown before. As you see people, and it's a lot of trends, right? Who's seen Tidying Up, the new Netflix show? It's like all over the internet right now. People are getting rid of their things and they're looking for experiences. And so as we came in and we said, here's a way that you can connect with people in real life, which does not sound revolutionary, but everyone's been on their phones, and so it feels like different in a way that it shouldn't feel different.
Right.
I think there's absolutely a piece that was timed right about what people are craving and what we have to offer.
Right.
On the co-working side of things, in a very small way, our timing was very strong in Charlotte. We launched again September 2015. One of the now largest co-working spaces in the area launched October 2015. And so we've partnered together since day one and just seen my business benefit theirs and seen theirs benefit. It's been very symbiotic, is that the word?
Right. In a way, it's kind of reflective of a substantial shift in how work is being done, too,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like 40% of the population today is not working in a conventional corporate environment. They're either freelancers or consultants or outsourced subject matter experts that used to have corporate positions, right? So in a way, you're holding up a mirror to the entire economy and how it's really changing in a really big way demographically.
Yeah, we see I think there's so many micro trends even in DIY growing and how
Right.
people are, the companies that I've seen trend in a similar but different way, like Etsy and Pinterest and just all of those things, but then the small business side of things as
Right.
well.
All right, so that completes my interrogation. So we can turn it over to the audience now. So who's got a great question? Go ahead. Teddy, I'm gonna hand you the microphone so your question is recorded for posterity.
Thank you very much for coming and sharing more about SkillPop. I knew about you, now I know more about you, and I want to know more about you. Is that fair to say? So there's two questions, and maybe I'll come to the second one later. So how can we help you bring this to Winston-Salem? Or what are your plans for expansion?
Good. I did not plan.
It feels a little
Well,
plain.
remember, I knew about you, and I'm learning about you.
Okay, so I'm going to give you two very practical things, and I'll touch on our plans as well. So one practical thing you can do is go to skillpop.com/nominate. You can share that link with friends and families, and that is where we're asking people to nominate where we should go next. And so we're in.
Go to skillpop.com/nominate.
And we're watching that,
It'd be a good market for you.
Yeah, that, we're looking at it. And that Peter and I actually talked about it before we started today, because I've been just hearing a lot of things about how Winston is
I know
growing.
a place.
Okay, this place. So that's one. I wanted to share the other thing. So for us to launch into new markets, we didn't talk about this a lot, but it's pretty lightweight, and we're really just looking for a core of great teachers to start us off. So if you want to make introductions or pass names to Peter or Andrea and pass names to me of local artists, of business leaders, of anyone that you think like, man, I would want to learn from them. If you can get those names to me, that helps make it happen. Our plans in general, we are hoping that 2019 is a year of lots of growth. And so we are kind of narrowing in on the next couple of cities for the next 6 months. And we're looking in the Southeast. And so Winston is on the list. Atlanta's on the list. We're in Greenville, South Carolina already, so we're looking at a few other places in South Carolina.
Mid-sized markets, that's where I'd go.
Yeah. But yeah, Winston's on the list.
Here's my next question. More of a, if I may, more of a very business focused. Businesses are created with one of two endpoints, done or acquisition. Have you thought about that?
So tell me what you mean by done.
Well, it dies with the founder.
Yeah.
That's done.
Yes. So I think it's hard to get into the startup-y world that we were in Techstars and not think about acquisition. Not think about what's the end goal of this business. What I'll tell you is that I really enjoy running it right now, and I really love the work that we're doing. And so I've met founders who are we're going to go so hard for 2 years and grow this as fast as we can so we can sell it. And I'm not that founder. So I don't know what that means for SkillPop in 10 or 15 or 20 years, but I think what we're doing right now is really exciting, and I like being along for the ride.
Good.
Pass around. Next.
So just one comment on that. There's a famous venture capital saying that when you're past the cookie, take it. So anyway, my question is, you've found a really interesting position, it seems like, between the Udemy type stuff that people are trying to learn and maybe meetups at the other end of the extreme, which is pure social and maybe a little education. And I was just wondering if you could a little bit more elaborate on how you're exploiting the social aspect for your competitive advantage, which seems like maybe the key to what you're working on compared to those two extremes,
Those
if you
two.
will.
Yeah, it's funny because when I'm explaining SkillPop, a lot of times it turns into, it's Udemy in real life, or it's Meetup but with classes. There's so many different ways to explain it. So what I say is probably more on the Udemy side of the spectrum is where we have a huge competitive advantage, in my opinion, because I think learning and community go really, really well together. And somewhere in the last 10 years, we kind of forgot that, and a lot of us started learning behind a computer screen, which there's a lot of ways to learn things, and it has, I think, a value. There's a huge convenience there. There's a huge cost advantage there. But what I remember about learning growing up is when you can kind of tag the person next to you and say, can you show me how to do this? Or when you're figuring things out together and you're forming bonds over that, or especially just the difference it makes to have a teacher literally in the room. You're not clicking pause and rewinding and watching her again. You can see what she's doing, or you can hear a little more what they're saying. So that's the social component, I think, just makes learning richer to me in that respect. But similar to what Peter said in his intro, a lot of what I saw, in Charlotte, being there I moved there 3 years or so before I started SkillPop from Raleigh. And a lot of what I saw was just people looking to meet other people and how hard that was, because you go to work, you go to the gym, you go home, you maybe have your friend that you met through your parents' friend somewhere along the way, but it's hard to meet people, and I think that's where we have really found a space as well, as just a place where you can go and the main goal can be, I'm going to learn watercolor, and then if I meet people, that's icing on the cake. But if I don't meet people, the night's not wasted. I went to a lot of great events where you'd have a beer and a name tag, and that's really good. And sometimes it would work, and sometimes it wouldn't. So I think we don't offer something better necessarily. It's just different. It provides a little bit more of a rounder experience. And so anyway, I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Something that's more diverse offerings than saying local.
Well, they gave me the mic, so I'll go next. So how do you pick your topics? I'm on your website, and I see you've got everything from, leadership to teaching animation to photography to watercolor to, home decorating. I mean, how do you know what the market needs, and how do you go out and how do you come up with your offerings?
So it's a great question. We start with a few main buckets. So we have some main buckets, some loose parameters. We do a lot of DIY crafts and hobbies. We do a lot of business development, so that'd be your leadership, your graphic design, social media. And then we do a lot of personal growth. So classes like that might be budgeting, investing, car maintenance basics. One of my favorite classes we do is a class on how to raise backyard chickens. We do about once a year on a farm down in Matthews, North Carolina. Just really fun things that you think, like, I need someone to show me how to do this. So that's where we start, is we get applications all the time from people wanting to teach, and we start with, does this fit into one of those categories? And then there's a little bit of, is this the right, is this person qualified to teach it? Is this someone who has years of experience, or who is just insanely talented, or who has raised backyard chickens for 20 years or whatever it is. But then a lot of how we figure out if the market wants something goes back to that MVP of, sometimes we'll get something and think, I don't know if anyone wants to learn this, but it sounds interesting and maybe we'll try it. And that's kind of the beauty of a one-time class, is we have that freedom and flexibility. 2 examples that come to mind, we found out that a whole lot of people are interested in how to brew kombucha. Never would have crossed my mind to do a kombucha homebrew class, but a lot of people got interested in that. And then we also do a hip hop dance class. Never would have crossed my mind. Really fun class.
And so they all are single events, just one night classes. You don't have any beginning, middle, and end kind of
So
thing.
what we do is we work with teachers long-term-ish. So, as we bring a teacher on, we're helping them think strategically about what's that first class that you can teach again and again. That's the intro to photography. And then what will people want to learn from you on top of that? So it won't be you're signing up for photography 1, 2, and 3, but you might take that first photography class and then come back for a portraits class, and then come back for a mobile photography class. So we try to build in layers to where you can keep learning, but it's all self-paced. It's on your own track. You're mixing and matching the way you want to mix and match.
I think we got Deborah next, but since I'm passing the mic, I'll ask a question too. How do you find your customers? Is it mostly digital marketing, or do you do a mix of traditional marketing, or how's that work?
We do a lot of social, a lot of content, and a lot of email. So one thing I think was just a bet that worked out early on was we really encourage people to sign up for email newsletters, and we send our new classes to subscribers before they get posted on social media, on Facebook, anywhere else. And so we really drove hard to that, and it paid off really well. As far as how we find people, we get a lot of word of mouth. We try and build word of mouth through the teachers that we're bringing on. So if you came on as a teacher, we'd give you tools to help tell everyone that you're teaching. So a lot of things kind of gave us some natural momentum like that. We do a little bit of paid advertising with Facebook. We always try new things. We do some craft fairs. But yeah, we try and really just get into communities and find people through partnerships and through teachers, things like that.
Gotcha. That was Deborah's question, actually, so I'm going to just take it down to the other Deborah on the other side.
So I was going to ask you your cost per client acquisition, and then also ask about diversity. So if you have intergenerational classes and diversity of mix of gender and diversity of people.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it varies a little bit per class in ways that you could probably guess. So if we do a hand lettering class, there are not a whole lot of men that come to that. It's mostly women. It's a lot of millennials. When we do photography classes, when we do writing, when we do business, we see closer to 50-50. We do some podcasting classes that are really diverse. And then age-wise, I'd say that changes more based on the location of where we're holding, what neighborhoods we're holding classes in. These are pop-up style, so they're at different venues all over the community. So, if we're in uptown Charlotte, that looks different than a suburb of Raleigh, North Carolina, right? So a lot of times it reflects the neighborhood that we're in.
And your cost per client, cost per acquisition client, do you know?
Yeah, gosh, I'm not comfortable throwing a number out. Yeah.
Just thought you might know.
Anybody else? Tom?
This is a business model question, and listening to this, I'm a little bit reminded of the Huffington Post, where they grew by bringing on writers, and their whole growth was driven by the ability to bring on writers to participate in their platform. And I wonder if your business model is almost exactly the same, where your growth is gated and based on your ability to bring on instructors with novel classes and deploy them in different locations. And if that's so, if I'm correct in that, what's your plan to bring on additional instructors to fuel your growth?
Yeah, I feel like I could have saved 2 weeks at Techstars if we'd had this conversation like a year ago. Because that was one of my big aha. Yeah, it was finding new teachers is a huge part of our growth. It's a really huge part of our growth. And that was something that I think clicked for me a little while into business when we saw the teachers who had been with us for a couple of years and were teaching more and more classes, just how much that was helping build that community. More so than teachers who would come on for a little bit and then leave or whatnot. So we put a really big emphasis on recruiting teachers. It's not a role that I have dedicated on my team right now, but we're very strategic about the classes we're looking for at any given time. When we look at new markets, we're looking at is there enough teachers there to support the market and to really help it grow over time. So yeah, it's a huge part of the growth. Oh, I'm not comfortable saying that either. But we do a revenue share with teachers. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Couple more questions. You got one in the back?
What's the screening process for your teachers? Do they have to have experience teaching, or do they have to be recommended by someone? How do you screen?
We do a short application and interview. You don't have to have any experience teaching, and I hear from people all the time, oh, I've never taught before, can I do this? And the answer is yes. So we have an application on our site that just walks through, here's the class I want to teach, here's why I'm the person for that, and here's what a class would look like. Because a social media class will look very different than a gardening class, and so we know there's a lot of leeway room in there for, there's not rules around you need to have a presentation, or there needs to be handouts, because all of these things that are on our platform, people learn different ways. So we do an application, and then we interview every teacher, and at some point, sit down or do a video call or a coffee and just talk through what does that class look like, and then we do a class and see how it goes.
Okay, one more? Is there
One more, and then we'll all have some beers.
Okay,
Your competitors, I'm interested in lifelong learning. I check out the Forsyth Tech or other Sawgrass, Sawtooth around here. So how do you compare your offerings to these other competitors?
Yeah, competitive landscape is a really interesting question because I think we sit between a lot of things versus we have a few competitors that look really similar in other parts of the country, but not a lot in this part of the country that's really similar. It just depends on what you're looking for. Compared to traditional community college or more traditional cultural arts center type things, we tend to be more flexible. We tend to be really easy to book. I had a woman coming to a public speaking class once. She was probably in her 50s, and she said she wanted to take public speaking at the local wherever institution, they were asking for a high school transcript. So there's just, you know, sometimes there's legacy things like that that are really silly. And so flexible, easy to book. We also try and keep a really affordable price point. So that's something that we didn't touch on earlier, but a big part of why I started the company was because I think learning new things should not be that expensive. You know, it shouldn't be a lot of what I see creatives going to. Oh, thanks. A lot of what I see creatives going to are really expensive weekend conferences or day-long workshops that are, you know, $1,000 or something crazy. And so price point is a place where we can be really competitive because we're not big on bells and whistles. We're big on really great teachers and really great experiences.
Okay, I get to ask the last question.
I think you did this last time too.
Yeah, I did. So, on the teacher question, is there a correlation between kind of the number of academic institutions and finding lots of great teachers, or how do you read a market in terms of, you know, whether it's going to offer up the kind of teachers that you need?
We have not seen that correlation. We haven't not seen it. You know what I mean? Like, I haven't seen either way if academic institutions plays a role. We don't have a whole lot of teachers in our network that are professors or that are in academia. So that's just not a correlation I have right now. You know, really, we're looking for specific categories. How easy are they to fill? And a lot of what we're doing on the research side is looking through Etsy, looking on Instagram, kind of searching for the creative people in this community. Where are they? You know, where are they online? Where are they offline?
Well, congratulations, you know, on starting a great company, your growth, and your ability to, you know, pull this off with your own resources. So please give a big hand to Haley Bohon, CEO of SkillPop.